to Late Night Review. Today is review of trial day number 14. And as predicted, we have Matt McCabe back on the stand first thing. So as we left off yesterday, we learned that he had awakened that morning to screams in his bedroom. So we find out where the screaming was coming from now. So he said his wife was on the phone and that's what awoke him. He heard Karen yelling, "Jen, Jen, Jen." She was saying, "I can't find John." This would have all been hearsay. However, he said he could hear the conversation between his wife, Jen, and Karen at that time. So he said he heard Karen say the last place she saw him was at the waterfall. And he said he thought Karen was crazy because he saw the SUV at 34 Fairview that night. He said in a later call that they told Karen they saw them at 34 Fairview, and Karen said, "I don't remember going there," and that she had cracked her tail light. Why she would mention that at this exact moment, I don't know, but this is his testimony. So he and his wife, Matt, and his wife, Jen, decided to make phone calls with individuals in which they thought John could possibly have met up with. And he said he himself texts John, "Where the hell are you now? Karen and Jen are out looking for you." And he didn't get a response back from John. He said, well, he got dressed and got ready to leave. Jen went downstairs to make coffee. And at a point later, Karen was yelling in the front yard at Matt and Jen's house, and Matt told Jen to tell Karen to shut up. She's going to wake up the whole neighborhood. He said that what she was yelling at that time again was Jen, Jen, Jen. He said he thought John was probably sleeping on someone's couch, and he thought, good, well, I'm not going to go out and look for John because I'm guessing, and this is my own interpretation, this could be wrong, but I'm guessing he thought that since Karen showed up to the house and Jen decided to go with Karen to look for John. And so he said he was concerned that Jen was going to be riding around with Karen with a broken tail light because he could see that there was no physical light on the tail light because of the weather was the reason for his concern. Because it's still dark out when they are going to be looking for John. You take that how you want. He said he spoke to his wife about an hour after she had left with Karen Reed, and that she informed him that they found John O'Keefe at 34 Fairview. And he said that he finished getting dressed and went over to the Albert home. He said when he got there were emergency vehicles there already, so he had to drive around it. He said when he went into the home, 34 Fairview, he said who was in there was Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Jennifer, his wife, Jen. He had seen John and Karen a week prior, so the 22nd of January, and he said he didn't see any problems between Karen and John. When asked about how John and Karen looked at the waterfall that night, he was asked if they looked intoxicated. He said no. He was asked more questions about the waterfall that night, and he said that John and Karen were at the table when everyone was invited to go back to the Albert's home, 34 Fairview. Matt said that Jen left the inside of the bar out to their vehicle first, and that he left outside around 12:10 a.m. He was asked if he ever heard any kind of crashing noises or any kind of noises outside while he was inside of the Albert home, and he said no, he didn't hear any noises, but there was music inside, so he doesn't know. He was asked questions if he saw any kind of pieces of brake light on the ground or if he saw a 5 to 6 foot man laying on the ground on the lawn. And he said no, he didn't see any of that. He was asked if he heard Julie Nagel, who was riding in the vehicle home when they were giving her and Sarah a ride. He was asked if he had heard her say there was a black blob as they passed the Albert's front lawn, or if he heard her say there's a person laying in the front lawn of the Albert's home, and he said no, he never heard any of that. We also find out that himself, Matt, Jen, his wife, Brian Albert, and Nicole Albert were in a group text chat later, 3 days later approximately. In these messages, he texted the group, "Troopers back out front, but in front of Asian house." Brian Albert said, "Now," and Matt told the group he was going to try and take a picture. Text messages were being read out to the court, and when we were going to hear what Brian's response was, Judge Beverly basically threw a fit, and it's best we just take a look.
Yes, I was letting him know that Carrie was being interviewed.
And you were telling him things that she was saying, correct? All right, in any case, we're going to move on to the very last discussion that I'd like to ask you about. Earlier that day, February 1st of 2022, at 12:50 p.m. and 37 seconds, Brian Albert texted the group, which would have again been his wife Nicole, your wife Jennifer, and you. And that text was...
Objection, Your Honor.
You know what, Mr. Yannetti, why don't you...
This is that for the court, Your Honor. And for the...
So you're objecting to it, so I'm not going to let you say what it is. You can show it to the witness.
Yes, go ahead.
Which one is this?
Second bubble on 02148. Then the third bubble on 02148. And then the first bubble on 02149. That's all I'll be asking him about.
Thank you.
All right, so I won't allow, based on the objection from the Commonwealth, the second bubble on 02148. I will allow the author of the third bubble on page 02148.
No. The second bubble on 02148.
Is not allowed into evidence.
I need to be heard on that then.
No, all right, I'll hear you at sidebar.
So during re-cross-examination from Mr. Lowley, he asked Matt, have you ever told the group of people to answer the investigators a certain way? And he said no, he never did that. So then defense had to go back and re-ask him questions again. And so Mr. Yannetti asked, you're telling us you've never told the group what to say to investigation? And he said, no, I've never done that. And he said, but you were just saying in the text messages, tell them John never went in the house. Who were you referring to? And he said he was referring to Channel 4. That he was telling the group to tell Channel 4 that John was never in the house. So that's pretty much what we get out of him. It's like sucked because I was really digging Matthew's testimony. He seemed like he was being pretty legit, and then there started becoming all sorts of like weird answers. It started not adding up, and it was just like, oh gosh. But what I am so grateful for is he didn't get amnesia like the rest of them. So at least we are getting answers out of the guy. We are moving on to Jennifer McCabe. She's the next one on the stand. Jennifer McCabe is Matt's wife, the one who was just on the stand. And she is Nicole Albert's sister. So we learned from Jennifer that she talked to John after they left the waterfall. The second time she talked to John over the phone, she gave reference for the 34 Fairview home, that it was near Bella's home, who was a lady he dated in the past. She said she saw the vehicle out in front of the Alberts' home and that they never came in, and so she assumed that they didn't come in because she thought maybe they changed their mind or got into an argument, or maybe Kaylee called, which is his niece. She said the next morning she texted him when they were looking for him and he did not reply. She also said when Kaylee called her in the morning, Karen was saying, Jen, John didn't come home last night, that they got into a fight and she had left him at the Waterfall bar. She said that she thought maybe John went home with Chris Albert, who was within walking distance of the waterfall, and she said that Chris was still there when they had left. So she called Julie, Chris's wife, to see if John ended up with him, but she didn't answer. She said she talked to Karen a second time over the phone, and she told Karen, quote, "We saw you outside of my sister's," and she said she didn't remember going there, and then started yelling, Jen, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And then she proceeded to say that she had a cracked taillight, end quote. Why she would say that, I don't know. I mean, with an overview of everything that's taking place, we know that that prosecution's claiming that Karen hit John with her vehicle. So that is the information we get from Jen. And she then said, oh my God, I left him there, and then told her that they got into a fight and she was just all over the place. Jen said she thought maybe John was with a friend named Tom who was supposed to meet up with them that night but didn't show up. Jen called Tom, but he didn't answer. Jen said when Karen was at her home, she kept yelling, Jen, did I hit him? Jen said when they went into the house and were checking the house, she noticed John's bed was made. She said she talked with Kaylee and she started crying while she was on the stand, though we never saw tears come out of her eyes, but she had like a crying voice. And she said that she told Kaylee that she promised that she would find John. So after dropping Karen's car off at John's house, the three of them got into Carrie's vehicle to go to 34 Fairview. She said that Karen was yelling in Carrie's car, Carrie, could I have hit him? Could he be walking home? He didn't come home. Carrie yelled at her to shut up and start looking out the window for him. Karen asked if he could be at Ashley's house, which is Bella's mother, the one that was reference to help them find 34 Fairview. Carrie asked, do you think he could be at another woman's house who lived close to there? And Karen said, who's that? They're referencing a woman that John had dated before. She said that when they got to 34 Fairview, Karen jumped out of the car and ran over to John, and then Carrie made a comment to Jen saying she's batshit crazy. So when they got to 34 Fairview, Karen yelled, there he is. And when they stopped, Karen jumped out of the car and went running over to John, and Carrie told Jen she's batshit crazy. She said Karen lifted up John's shirt and then lifted up hers and proceeded to lay on him. She said that she called 911 and told them where they were. Jen described John as being covered in snow and that she saw Carrie wiping the snow off of John's face. Carrie was yelling at Karen to get off of John and told Karen to give him CPR. Carrie told Jen to take over giving John CPR. Carrie then told Jen to take over giving John chest compressions. The police finally got there and paramedics. As the paramedics worked on him, Karen kept asking, is he dead? Is he dead? And then told Jen to Google how long it takes for someone to die of hypothermia. She said she called Nicole after she got off the phone with 911, but that her sister didn't answer. She said she eventually went over to Nicole's house because an officer wanted to talk to them, and she went over to Nicole's house inside the house to wake them up. When she woke Brian and Nicole, that Brian woke up first, and it took Nicole a little bit longer, and that when Brian awoke, she thinks Brian yelled, who's John? She said they came downstairs to talk with Officer Link, who was in the house waiting to talk to them, and at this time it was her, Nicole, and Brian. She said when she had went into the house, as she was going into the house, that she called her husband Matt. She said that Matt eventually showed up. The officer told her to stay there at the Fairview house because there was going to be a state cop that was going to go over to talk to her. And she said that John got taken to the hospital and that Carrie left in Carrie's car, and then Carrie came back. She was gone for about 5 minutes, but then she said she doesn't know when Carrie came back. So, because she didn't see Carrie come back. So, whatever. That's the information we were given. She said that Nicole, Matt, Brian, herself, and that Julie had showed up, that Brian Higgins was there as well. And she wasn't sure how he got there or like why he went there. So then Officer Link and Officer Gallagher went to the house and questioned everybody there. So she said she called Officer Link because Officer Link told her to give him a call if she remembers something. She said while she was sitting there thinking, she remembered the comments Karen was making, and so Julie Albert gave her Officer Link's phone number to call. We're going to take that at face value. However, I want to say, usually when an officer tells you to call them, if you remember anything, they give you their card and their phone number, like on a little business card, so that way you can call them. So I'm not quite sure why Julie Albert was needing to give her the number to call Officer Link. You can make whatever you want with that information. I find it suspicious. So she calls Officer Link and tells him that she remembers Karen making comments to one EMT that she hit him. Why she only told the officer about the one comment when we have heard through her testimony about Karen saying, I hit him, could I have hit him? Is he dead? Where is he? Like, we heard lots of comments. Is he walking? Could he be walking down the street? Like, we heard lots of comments from Jen that Karen made. So I don't know why she felt that she needed to call Officer Link, because she remembers Karen making a comment to one EMT that she said, I hit him. She told this one EMT, I hit him. And that's all she informed the officer, but didn't bother to tell him about any of the other comments that she said. I don't know. I find that a little suspicious. She said that eventually she finally left the home at about 11 a.m. Well, her and her husband, and they went back to their own house. And she said that Detective Proctor was coming to her house and she didn't know Officer Proctor or Officer Buchanan. She said she asked Brian to come over because she was nervous, which contradicts Brian's testimony, because he was asked, why were you over at Jen's house? Were you just like monitoring her yard, or like why were you there? And he said he went over, if you remember in one of my videos about me saying how it was strange that Brian said he went over to Jennifer's house because he was worried this was too much for her to handle. Yet we hear Jennifer saying that he came over because she called him because she was nervous and she thinks of him as a big brother. Now, I'm not quite sure why her husband being there with her wasn't enough, but whatever. This is her testimony. So this is what we learn through prosecution, and that is the end of day 14. So we will pick up with Jennifer McCabe on day 15 with defense questioning her. Thanks for watching.